Hello, I'm Russ Fellows from the Futurum Group, and this is another tech webcast. And today I'm joined by Deepak Rangaraj and Brett Henning. I'll let you both introduce yourselves. Brett, you want to tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yes, I'm Brett Henning. I am a security architect in the Broadcom Data Center Solutions Group. I work on storage, networking, and PCIe switches, and I specifically focus on security for those devices.
Excellent. And Deepak?
Hi, I'm Deepak Rangaraj. I'm with Dell Technologies. I'm a product planner and product manager for the PowerEdge cybersecurity and BIOS capabilities.
Right. And so today's topic, we're talking about some of the security features within Dell and Broadcom, right? So the Broadcom, several add-in cards are incorporated in with the Dell PowerEdge server line. And I want to give a little bit of context for what we're seeing around security. I've been in IT for a long time, going back to the late 80s, right? So I was an IT administrator and I managed a group of IT people. And one thing always with security is that we typically did as little as possible, as little as we were required to do, just because we always saw security as getting in the way of either ease of use, usability, complex passwords. Why can't I just use root Calvin for everything, right? But gradually over time, every year, people have more and more understood, the security implications, and especially in the last 5 years, with the rise of ransomware and a lot of malware attacks, the customers that we're seeing are focusing heavily on security. In fact, security in general, um, cyber attacks of different sorts, those types of malware that get in are one of the primary things that our clients are talking with us about. And we've done a number of surveys, and reducing the attack surface is one of the primary conversations that we're having with our IT clients. So everybody today realizes the importance of this cybersecurity in general and want to know what they can do in following best practices. So I think this is really a timely conversation to talk about some of the technologies that are emerging to enhance this further. Um, so one of the frameworks that we developed in order to look at all of this is a security model. So the future security framework. And what we did is we looked at multiple NIST standards and some other industry standards and best practices as well. And so we looked across over 65 different areas at the security, from the supply chain to the manufacturing to the engineering design, to the product features, as well as to how it's deployed within IT environments. So all these go into making a completely secure environment. Um, so Deepak, you had a few thoughts around the security threat landscape that you wanted to talk about. You want to kick things off with your perspectives?
Yeah, happy to. You covered a lot of things. Complexity is a big term which is getting thrown around a lot right now. And that's true. Even when we look at our server products and where they're getting deployed, it's in data centers, co-locations, edge, cloud, right? So it's in a hybrid environment. And again, we're also dealing with customers who have different requirements. They fall in a huge spectrum. Some whose security tolerance and risk tolerance is pretty low because of the kind of workloads that they're running, the mission critical stuff they're running. And others not so much. They want flexibility. So yeah, our products are designed to operate in that hybrid environment to satisfy the needs of all of those customers. And especially with the complexity of the threat landscape that we're seeing, it's evolving rapidly, right? There was this one recent survey I was reading where they said 85% of the security professionals polled indicated that they are seeing a correlation in the increase of the number of attacks and the frequency of attacks with the rise of AI tools. So the very same tools that we talk about, which helps us increase our productivity, is also helping attackers, right? Um, and that's the world that we're living in, and we need to do a lot to be able to stay protected in it. And with our PowerEdge servers, being the foundation of our customers' IT infrastructure, we want to make sure that they're foundationally secure, they're secure by design, so that this customers stay protected and they can do the things that they want to do for their business, innovate on the business without security becoming a burden for them. So that's a key focus area for Dell.
Right. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And Brett, now a lot of the adding components that you work with at Broadcom are designed to work together with the Dell PowerEdge systems. You want to talk a little bit about some of the principles that you at Broadcom use to integrate with the Dell server line?
Yeah. No, just looking at uh, some of the ways that the industry has changed in the last few years. When we going back a couple decades, if you were designing devices that went into a server, you could always just depend on the server to provide a security barrier to you. And that assumption's gone. So an important principle that we've really brought into our devices and into our engagement with Dell is that we no longer assume that the device is protected by anything outside of it. The device has to be secure on its own. It has to have a security posture that stands on its own. And so we've been bringing a lot of these same principles to the devices that are going into the PowerEdge servers. So we're also doing secure design from the start. We are following standards so that we're following best practices in the industry. And we're really trying to make the security story seamless for customers. So we've been working hand in hand with Dell to make sure that we can address everything from those small customers who need something that's very turnkey to the larger customers that really need to be able to customize down to the very core of the product.
Right. So the secure by design, now there's a term used quite a bit recently, zero trust, right? So that means that nothing implicitly trusts anything else. You have to prove to me who you are and have some type of method of authenticating, right? And device attestation and all that, right? And that's used to then set up secure communications between different devices. And that can occur between a server and an add-in PCIe card, or even between PCIe cards and other devices. So, yeah, I think that zero trust is a component that both Dell and Broadcom are using. So, Deepak, you have anything you want to talk about with the zero trust capabilities that are designed into the new 16G servers?
Yeah, definitely. So zero trust for us is a core security principle that we adhere to, right? Both internally when we are developing our products, we are thinking about it from the zero trust principles perspective. Like, how can we make every single thing that we do secure internally? At the same time, we also want to deliver capabilities and features to our customers to enable those zero trust deployments in their own data centers to create that zero trust architecture on their end, the zero trust environment and operations on their end. So we're building in capabilities with that in mind. So irrespective of where the customers are in their journey to adopting zero trust, we have capabilities built in which can help them. So that's a key part of it. At the same time, you can take a step back and think about it. Zero trust is about the cybersecurity principles, but there's also this requirement from the customers right now for transparency and commitment to doing developing the products in a secure manner, right? So that's where I think secure by design kind of jumps into the conversation, and it's getting a little more traction. Um, it's all about making customers' lives easier. It's reducing the security burden on their end, and that's another key focus that we are looking into as part of our PowerEdge
Yeah.
portfolio.
Right. And Brett, I know that you guys are leveraging zero trust as well, and also working with emerging standard like SPDM for secure communication within systems. Anything you want to talk about there?
Yeah. So for us, zero trust is a big part of our posture in the server these days. From the point of view of the device, yeah, we no longer have inherent trust in anything. So every time we boot, we run secure boot. We don't trust the firmware that's loaded in our device just because it's there. We have to verify it. And then every time we join the server, we actually have to be authenticated using SPDM. So we have to prove our secure posture every single time the device initializes. And so that's really a foundational piece of zero trust for us. Where secure by design also comes in, and it's good that you brought that up, Deepak, because secure design really points to a number of principles that make our zero trust architecture more trustworthy or more secure.
Right. So, for those who don't know, we did pretty in-depth testing and analysis of this product. So we had access to a couple of Dell System 16G servers, current generation. They had the latest Broadcom 57508, I believe is the correct model number, right, for the 100 gig NIC, along with a Broadcom-based PERC card. So this is, a custom Dell product, but it's based on a Broadcom chip design for doing RAID, right? The PERC chip. So the systems that we tested have both those in there, and we looked at quite a few things. So we tried out the secure boot, both over, uh, you know, the NIC and also off the PERC card, and verified that you could do all that. And yes, you can definitely make it so that it won't boot if you load an image that is not, does not have the proper credentials. And we tried firmware updates through the lifecycle controller. Actually, we got one image that did not have the proper credentials on purpose, and it refused to update it. It said, "Nope, I don't like the credentials in this batch of firmware. I'm not going to update it." And that was on, I believe, it was on the PERC card, right? So it wouldn't update it there. Updated it everywhere else across the system. 17, 18 different firmware patches. Who knows? I can't keep track of how many it was, but so that was pretty impressive to see that. Yes, it works both ways. It does what it should positively, and it rejects what it should also negatively. So that's important, right? And another thing that we found that I liked a lot was, we looked at the management tools, and all these things are, integrated throughout with iDRAC, and then the Dell OME tool for, local system management, and then also Cloud IQ. And in particular, I was pretty impressed with Cloud IQ. I hadn't used it in a few years, um, but and I hadn't looked at it so much from a security standpoint before. I've used it from a storage management perspective. And what I noticed is that they, sort all of your different systems by, recommended patches. Like here, we see that these outstanding issues are the most important things that you should address. Because again, when I was an IT administrator, you could literally spend your entire day, all day, every day, updating systems, right? There's an endless supply of patches. So it's really important to prioritize, okay, which ones are critical. And so the tools, being able to monitor and prioritize those, I think, was a really nice feature, saying, hey, look at these 3 or 4 servers and apply these patches because these are the most critical, right? So I was pretty impressed by that. And it seems that you both have worked well together because, the status of all the Broadcom components was right there at every level. So yeah, anything either you want to add on those thoughts?
Yeah, yeah. Thank you for saying that, Russ. Glad to know it was appreciated. And you're exactly right. Vulnerability management is a big part of any IT administrator's role, right? And if you look at the amount of effort it takes to figure out, once a vulnerability is disclosed, first going analyzing what is reported, checking if it actually affects your system by taking track of all of your software assets, all of your hardware assets, mapping it to the CVE to make sure it's affected or not. Now you go check your entire fleet of systems to see if any of those systems have the affected firmware versions, then figure out if there are patches available and if the systems have been patched. That's a lot of steps that they have to go through. And that's exactly what we want to simplify and reduce the burden for our customers by putting in all those capabilities into Cloud IQ. We have a single dashboard where you can just go look at all of your fleet, figure out which of the systems have a known vulnerability, and if they have a vulnerable firmware version, is there a patch available? And there's a button right there that you can just go click and update your system. Right? It's intended to do that. It's intended to make our customers' lives easier. And again, extending it to the SPDM piece that you're talking about, that's again a critical piece. As Brett touched upon it, it's we we like to add these robust layers of security to create that defense in depth. And SPDM is an important part of that, right? Where we have our own root of trust at the platform level. The components that we get from our partners like Broadcom, they have their own root of trust. So that adds additional layers. Now you add SPDM on top of it, you get this zero trust means, right, where you have capabilities for attesting the identity of the components, capabilities for attesting to the authenticity, integrity of the components. So that adds more layers and makes our platform even more secure. And that's where we want to partner strongly with our vendors like Broadcom to add those layers and make it more secure.
Yeah, I was pretty impressed that it all seemed pretty seamless. And then the another thing I noticed was the secure component verification tool, which was pretty nice. So, my system had been modified since manufacturing, and it identified the components that were modified. So, not part of the manufacturing process apparently was the the PERC card was, but the Broadcom NIC was not part of it. It said, okay, this wasn't part on the original bill of materials, and neither were the memory modules, right? So it said, okay, these were part of the original order, and these items were not part of the original order. Didn't say that they were, suspect or anything, but just this was not on the original bill of materials from the initial order from the factory. So I thought that was interesting to flag that. So, people buying in volume can be assured that they're getting exactly what they ordered, right? I think that's important handshake there that you both seem to do a great job on.
No, that's good to hear that went smoothly for you.
Yeah, like I said, I've been doing this for a while. Yeah, and so there's a lot of security built in with the secure boot at the UEFA level and the Pixie boot coming off the Broadcom card. All that has to work, together and operate similarly. That's always a tough word for me to say. um, so that people can, do secure boot in any manner, either from local media or over the network, right? But we tried those both out and worked well. So I think that was goes a long way toward making this realistic. And like you said, people want security now. They're highly concerned about it, and they want to follow industry best practices. But they want to do it in a way, hopefully, that doesn't impact their day job, which is delivering IT services to their clients, right? So, making it as unobtrusive as possible, and integrated throughout the tool stack. And so, it's pretty impressed that it seems well thought out. Any other thoughts that you wanted to add there, Brett?
Yeah, no, I'm glad you had a good experience with it. Our team, our development team put a lot of effort into making that as seamless as possible and as smooth as possible. So, like you said, security doesn't actually get in the way; it just enhances the experience.
Right. That goes back to the principle of secure by design, right? Everything is secure by design, and the default option now is security. So for longtime Dell users, no more root Calvin for the drive, right? It's easy to use and easy to remember, but same goes for hackers, right? So that's no longer the default option, which is great.
Right, and that's the intent, right? Security is meant to add friction into the system so that it becomes difficult for the attackers.
Right.
And it's also, you have to have the right trade-off, because you need to not affect the productivity of the users adversely by doing these things.
That's
So
exactly
whether it is, whether it is encryption, where you're sacrificing some performance for protection, or whether it is multi-factor authentication, all of those things are intended to add that friction into the system to make it difficult for attackers, but at the same time have the right balance so the user's productivity is not affected.
Right. Yeah, that's definitely what we saw. So yeah, we have a paper available, about an 11-page paper. I have it right here, a copy of it right here, available, and that will be available on Futurum Group's website as well as Dell InfoHub. So you can find out more details about all this, and welcome anybody's questions or feedback. So always love to hear from our IT user community. So I'll close it out for myself, and Deepak and Brett, I'll let you say any final thoughts that you have.
Yeah. Well, thanks for having me here for this discussion. This has been a great discussion, just talking about the where things are in security, and really we just look forward to continuing this partnership and what future products will continue to bring to users.
Yeah, that's great. Hey, Deepak, any follow-up thoughts?
Sure. I just want to close by saying, at Dell Technologies, we're investing heavily to make security simple and easy for customers. We don't want it to become a burden where you have to go figure out how to, hire experts for every single organization to be able to make the product secure. We want it to be simple, right? And that's something we're heavily focused on, and making our products foundationally secure and secure by design. It was really great chatting with you both. Hearing Brett's perspective, that's always interesting to hear from other experts in the industry. Thank you for having me. This was a great chance to discuss all these great topics.
Yeah, I think people will find this highly interesting because obviously servers are, one of the primary targets within organizations, right? So if you want to start with security, that's a great place to start. And a lot of these tools that we mentioned are just built into the systems now. The secure by design actually means something, right? So it's designed in, they're available, and it's integrated throughout the management stack from, iDRAC to OME to Cloud IQ. Encompasses all of the add-in cards from Broadcom. So it's a pretty holistic viewpoint for security, and I recommend people take a look at what's available. So we'll have more information available on our website and at the Dell Info Hub, and you can find links to the paper within this video. So I'm Russ Fellows from the Futurum Group. Thanks. See you next time.